What monster has been left out of the Dungeons and Dragons 5e monster manual that you think should have been included in the monster manual, and why? What have you got for us, Logan?
This was a really hard question for me because I just, as we've talked about, there's so many great additions of just whether they're independently made or from Wizards of the Coast, of just books and books and books filled with different ideas of monsters. Not to mention the scores of ideas I have in my head that I wish I could put straight into the monster manual. But one classic monster that I've always really liked is the Wendigo. That is something, just from different folklore origins of it to different iterations I've seen of it in other kinds of games, or different ways it's been statted out and put into different kinds of variant monster manuals that are out there. The Wendigo is such a cool monster to me. I can't get over how creepy it can be when used properly. I really like the design of it, just the look of it, and I've seen lots of different versions of it. I've seen kind of this looking like almost like a Sasquatch looking version. I've seen one where it's like this really gaunt, tall, skeletal clawed creature with a cow skull instead of a face and just blood dripping out the bottom of it. And just when it's like those classic kinds of monsters, like especially from folklore, how many different times can you reimagine a dragon? How many different times can you reimagine a vampire? Wendigo, for me, I know it's maybe a little less well known, but that's something that it just gives me so many ideas. And one of the cool things I remember reading about this once is that it's kind of like a curse that's given to people that fall into cannibalism. Whether it comes from the gods or from the vengeful spirits of those that were cannibalized, it's something that twists a regular person into this demonic, flesh-hungry creature. That kind of ghost story that you can have the players hear around a campfire in a tavern or something like that. It just makes for a really good monster that I think should be put into the monster manual.
Josiah, what would be the monster you would like to include in the monster manual that was not put in the Dungeons and Dragons 5e monster manual? What would be your pick?
I know AJ is going to agree with me on this because you mentioned it earlier. I made a video about this exact topic, actually, because I was riled up when Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes came out. My answer is the Phoenix. Okay? The Phoenix is everyone knows what a Phoenix is. It's like one of the most classic fantasy creatures, right? It's iconic. The fact that it was left out of the monster manual, I was like, we got room for all this nonsense. You got room for a full page artwork of Gaston fighting a werewolf, but we don't have room for the Phoenix. Like, okay. Fun fact, Gaston is in the monster manual. You get that one for free. It blows my mind because Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes did eventually come out and the Phoenix was in there. And I was like, oh, there's a Phoenix stat block. This is going to be cool. And then I read it and I was like, this is insanity. This is not a Phoenix. This is a big fire elemental. Like, it's so lame. It's just, for those of you who aren't aware, the Phoenix in Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes is just a big ball of fire shaped like a bird that burns things indiscriminately. And it's a fire. It's like a CR20 fire elemental. That's what it is. Okay. I don't know. It's frustrating that exists in a canon book because it means that now there won't be a proper Phoenix stat block. So that would be my pick for what should be added to the monster manual, because Phoenix, they're awesome. Both from just like a fight perspective. It's like, okay, it's basically a rock that has fire powers that can regenerate itself and do all this neat stuff. That's cool just for like a big monster encounter. But they also have this really neat lore, or folklore rather, in like mythos attached to them where, you know, they have these healing properties and they're known to be like kind of benevolent but intense creatures. So it's like, oh, a party member died. Let's go on a quest to like get a feather from the Phoenix. And if we do that, we can use that to bring them back to life, or an important NPC or something. That's a quest on its own, right? Someone's child in the village dies and your party is like your ragtag group of like level 2 PCs that are like, we're going to get together as like the most capable members of this community. We're going to go to that giant mountain where a Phoenix is said to live. and we're going to get a feather from it, and adventure ensues. And then when you get there, like, how does the party approach that? Do they go up and try to convince it to bestow a feather upon them? Maybe they have to do another quest for the phoenix. Maybe they have to save it from some type of danger, or maybe they're the danger and they go there with intent to kill, and then that turns into a big fight. It's such a neat monster that can be used in so many different ways. And it's a travesty that it was left out, and also the way it was presented in future content. I think about it sometimes, and my day is ruined.
Yeah.
But honestly, though, it is wild that that's where we landed on the Phoenix. Anyway, that's my monster that I wish was in the monster.
I'm getting riled up just thinking about it. It's like, couldn't you have made it at least a radiant elemental creature? That way, like, the fire effect is things reaching their full potential around it and exploding into like radiant energy. And then the regeneration would have made sense, and using it as a potent source of magic.
I had a version of the Phoenix that I sat it out because I did a video on it. And in that version of it, it had like a life aura around it, that everything around it regenerated hit points. And it's like, okay. And if you're at your max hit points, you start getting temp hit points. And the players are like, this is great. If you exceed 100 temporary hit points, you start dying. Your body starts mutating. And it's like too much. And I remember running this for players, and they were like, this is easy. We'll just wail on this thing where we can't die. And then someone hit 105, and I'm like, you lose use of your arms, and you start growing like extra arms and stuff. And they were like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
And then it turned into, okay, you need the barbarian. Come, you have 3 attacks. Come hit me, and then hit him so that we stay below the threshold. And then we can keep fighting the Phoenix, because they realized that once it was like 150 hit points, you just died because it was like too much. It was overwhelming. So it turned into this encounter. The Phoenix wasn't even doing damage. It was trying to avoid them and like cause obstacles to come in for the players to not be able to hit it, while simultaneously healing everyone to death. Like, I don't know. I'm not saying that's what yeah, and like, I'm not saying that's what should be in the book, but at least something. Like, I don't know, dude.
You got to have some capacity to have like the end part of the fight with Tetsuo in Akira, like where he's mutating and turning into this horrible monster.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, they just throw out
sad.
So much like integral lore with that one little change. It's like one stroke of the pen, and I'm just like, okay. So in the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon, very popular cartoon, which is still like a massive nostalgia trip for anybody who watches it, you've got a Phoenix character that's in that, along with the unicorn, which I hate that unicorn with a passion.
I hate that unicorn.
Oh, I hate that unicorn. It's like, oh, uni can't climb the ladder. Yeah, no, yeah. Anyway,
leave them.
And the second layer of, I'm currently writing a script on Pandemonium at the moment, and on the second layer of Pandemonium, there is a place called the Spire, which is one of the few locations you can go to in Pandemonium where everything sort of happens. There's just like this concentration of stuff going on, and the Spire is built around it's built on top of the gravesite of a phoenix. Now, when you go to the Spire and you say that there's a phoenix underneath there, players are going to be thinking, what? So the place is infused with elemental fire? No! No, it doesn't make any sense anymore. It's like, they just like, take this little domino. Oh, what does this one do? Holds up everything else.
You've ruined it.
Yeah. You collapsed the cards of lore. 40 years of lore have just fallen to pieces.
I literally, I made a video about this exact topic, and it's like 15 minutes long. And like, I remember the thumbnail is a picture of me and like that verses that everyone uses in their thumbnails, and then a picture of Mike Merles. And yeah, exactly. And like, I think it was actually a video like review of Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, and I spent half of the video talking about how the Phoenix has just been done so dirty. Anyway,
we've got entirely different reasons for hating Mike Mills, and they're more valid than yours.
AJ, what would be the monster that you think should be included in the monster manual for Dungeons and Dragons 5e that they left out?
I wouldn't say a specific monster. I'm going to say a category of monsters that I made a heavy use of in 4th edition, which was minions. So minion versions of anything should be in the 5th edition Monster Manual. Although it changes things up quite a bit, I think it would have brought across that idea to the players that I was kind of talking about earlier. Like in players, I'm talking about dungeon masters as well, that encounters are supposed to be groups of creatures versus the party, not just one individual thing. So you could have like the minion version of a manticore would be the manticore's offspring, or it could be scavengers like vultures and things which are living around the kills of the manticore, which you have to wade through to get to the actual fight. I like that idea of that sort of classic creature. My other one would be, if we're talking specific creatures, which is really what the question is asking, I don't think we've seen enough small, annoying humanoids that you encounter underground. Germalanes and mites and those sort of creatures, like the little rat-like humanoids, not just kobolds and stuff. They're like larger creatures, but there's underground bastards that set traps and steal your stuff and escape down cracks and walls and make rat burrows and things like that. And they're constantly like, there's this ecology of people who make dungeons, and then the dungeons get destroyed by little creatures that come in and make use of it and create secret passages and use it as their own sort of, hunting ground and stuff. But they're perfectly happy underground. A good example of that is a throwaway creature which a lot of people probably have never heard of, called the pech. And the pech is a Underdark humanoid species that is perfectly adapted to living in dugout caverns and things like that. And they're reasonably unremarkable, apart from a few appearances in like comic books and a monster listing here and there. Pechs really ever get a mention, but they're just like in the background of the Underdark, surviving amongst all this craziness, and they really don't have a lot going for them, but they would be an invaluable NPC to encounter if you're in a tricky spot in the Underdark where all of a sudden just like a rope lowers from somewhere and this friendly little peck is like helping you out, while at the same time you're getting attacked by Germalanes who are stealing your magic items. It's like, oh.
So for me, the monster that I really would have liked to have seen in the monster manual, other than the ones that people have already talked about, and I'm not going to go near those, I'm going to go with something else, is actually the living wall, which is basically a really gross thing that is made up of faces, parts of faces, bones, bits and pieces like that. But I know that that's probably not going to happen because of the nature of the living wall. So my next choice, since that's probably going to be censored out because it's a bit much, is the roving mauler. And for those of you who don't know, and I'm sure you guys do know, this is basically a creature that is a wheel. And it's just made up of lion feet. It's got a lion face. It's got no body. It doesn't make any sense. It's the stupidest and silliest creature you could possibly imagine.
It's like they took it directly off a coat of arms and said, okay, this is a living thing now.
It just breathes fire. Of all things, it breathes fire. Now, here's the really strange thing is, how does this thing sit down and sleep? And if it does sit down and sleep, how does it ever get back up again? Because it's not built to be able to get up and down. So I'm assuming that it has to sleep on its feet upright in the wheel position, which means...
Perhaps it farts fire and uprights itself with a little burst of explosive gas.
Now we're theory crafting.
Maybe.
See, so is that official lore?
Look, AD&D was a wild time.
So my reason for wanting this monster is it is such a bat crazy monster out of all the things they used to take and just put everything together to try to make a new monster when they're absolutely desperate and couldn't come up with any more ideas. This is the one I want, because I definitely want that opportunity for my players to sneak up on it, kick it over on its front, and then once they kick it over on its front, they can just beat it to death, because it won't ever be able to get back up, and it won't be able to breathe on them because it'll be facing down. So that's the one I have picked to add to the monster manual.
It's like a biblical angel, but stupid.
Well, that's when you discover that it can breathe out its fire as a jet stream, and it's now a spinning, rotating claw wheel of death.
Starts going off like just a really mean Beyblade.
Yeah, it's like that that episode of Doctor Who where they think they're safe from the Dalek because they've reached some stairs, and then it goes elevate. And it's like, oh no, it can fly now.
So tell me what monster you think should be added to the monster manual or should have been added to the Dungeons and Dragons 5e monster manual down in the comments. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.